What if I told you that a book written over 2,700 years ago predicted the rise and fall of empires, described modern warfare with uncanny accuracy, and foretold events that are still unfolding today? Welcome back to the channel where we dive deep into ancient wisdom that shapes our modern world. Today we're unlocking the mysteries of one of the most prophetic and influential books ever written, the Book of Isaiah. By the end of this video, you'll understand why scholars call Isaiah the Shakespeare of the Hebrew Bible and why world leaders still quote its passages in times of crisis. Before we begin this incredible journey, make sure to hit that subscribe button because we're about to explore prophecies that span centuries and revelations that will change how you see history itself. And trust me, you don't want to miss what we uncover about chapter 53. The Book of Isaiah stands as a towering monument in biblical literature, comprising 66 chapters that span approximately 2 centuries of prophetic vision. Named after the Hebrew prophet Isaiah, whose name means salvation of the Lord, this book represents one of the most comprehensive collections of prophecy in the Old Testament. But here's where it gets fascinating. Isaiah isn't just one man's writings compiled together. Modern scholarship reveals that Isaiah represents the work of multiple prophets across different time periods, traditionally divided into 3 distinct sections. First, Isaiah chapters 1 through 39 originates from the 8th century BCE during the actual lifetime of the prophet Isaiah of Jerusalem. Second, Isaiah chapters 40 through 55 emerges from the Babylonian exile period around 540 BCE. Third, Isaiah chapters 56 through 66 comes from the post-exilic period when the Jewish people returned to Jerusalem. This multi-generational composition explains why Isaiah addresses events spanning from the 8th century BCE through the Persian period and beyond. The book's structure reflects this temporal complexity while maintaining thematic unity around God's sovereignty, judgment, and ultimate restoration. Let's start with the historical context that shapes everything in Isaiah. Picture the ancient Near East in the 8th century BCE. The mighty Assyrian Empire dominates the region, crushing smaller nations under its military might. The kingdom of Israel has split into 2 parts, the northern kingdom of Israel and the southern kingdom of Judah. Political alliances shift like sand, and religious corruption runs rampant among God's chosen people. Into this turbulent world steps Isaiah ben Amoz, a prophet whose ministry spans the reigns of 4 Judean kings, Uzziah, Jotham, Ahaz, and Hezekiah. Chapter 6 describes his dramatic calling in the year King Uzziah died, around 740 BCE. Isaiah receives his commission in a vision of God's throne room, where seraphim cry out, "Holy, holy, holy is the Lord Almighty. The whole earth is full of His glory." The prophet's response reveals his human frailty. "Woe to me, I am ruined, for I am a man of unclean lips, and I live among a people of unclean lips. And my eyes have seen the King, the Lord Almighty." This confession of unworthiness precedes his purification by a burning coal and his acceptance of God's mission to speak difficult truths to His people. Isaiah's early ministry coincides with the Syro-Ephraimite War around 735 BCE, when Syria and the northern kingdom of Israel attempt to force Judah into an alliance against Assyria. King Ahaz of Judah panics and considers appealing to Assyria for protection. Isaiah confronts the king with a prophetic word that becomes central to Christian theology. "Therefore the Lord Himself will give you a sign. The virgin will conceive and give birth to a son, and will call him Emmanuel." This prophecy in chapter 7 verse 14 demonstrates Isaiah's layered approach to prophetic utterance. In its immediate context, it likely refers to a sign for King Ahaz's generation. Yet Christian interpretation sees this as a Messianic prophecy fulfilled in the birth of Jesus Christ, illustrating how Isaiah's words operate on multiple levels of meaning across time. The theme of divine judgment permeates the first section of Isaiah. Chapter 1 opens with a scathing indictment of Judah and Jerusalem. "Hear me, you heavens, listen, earth, for the Lord has spoken. I reared children and brought them up, but they have rebelled against me." The prophet describes a nation sick from head to foot, whose religious observances have become meaningless ritual divorced from justice and mercy. Isaiah's critique extends beyond personal morality to systemic injustice. Chapter 5 presents the famous parable of the vineyard, where God plants and tends a vineyard expecting good grapes but finding only wild ones. The vineyard of the Lord Almighty is the nation of Israel, and the people of Judah are the vines he delighted in. And he looked for justice, but saw bloodshed, for righteousness, but heard cries of distress. The prophet specifically targets wealthy elites who accumulate property at the expense of the poor, corrupt judges who pervert justice for bribes, and religious leaders who call evil good and good evil. These social critiques establish Isaiah as not merely a predictor of future events, but a moral voice challenging systemic oppression. Chapters 13 through 23 contain oracles against foreign nations that reveal Isaiah's understanding of international politics as subject to divine sovereignty. The prophecy against Babylon in chapters 13 and 14 presents particular interpretive challenges since Babylon hadn't yet risen to imperial dominance during Isaiah's lifetime. This oracle may represent later prophetic insight or demonstrate how Isaiah's vision extended far into the future. The oracle against the king of Babylon in chapter 14 includes the famous passage about Lucifer's fall. How you have fallen from heaven, morning star, son of the dawn. You have been cast down to the earth, you who once laid low the nations. While originally addressing a human ruler's hubris, this passage has been interpreted in Christian tradition as describing Satan's rebellion against God. Isaiah chapters 24 through 27 shift from specific historical judgments to apocalyptic visions of cosmic transformation. These chapters describe the earth's complete desolation, followed by resurrection and restoration. Chapter 25 verse 8 declares, He will swallow up death forever. The sovereign Lord will wipe away the tears from all faces. He will remove his people's disgrace from all the earth. This theme of death's defeat becomes central to both Jewish and Christian eschatology. The passage envisions not merely individual resurrection, but cosmic renewal, where death itself ceases to exist. Such themes bridge the gap between Isaiah's historical concerns and ultimate spiritual realities. The Hezekiah narratives in chapters 36 through 39 provide historical grounding for Isaiah's prophetic ministry during the Assyrian crisis of 701 BCE. When Sennacherib's armies surround Jerusalem, King Hezekiah seeks Isaiah's counsel. The prophet assures him that God will defend the city, and 185,000 Assyrian soldiers die overnight, forcing Sennacherib's withdrawal. However, these same chapters record Hezekiah's foolish display of treasury wealth to Babylonian envoys, prompting Isaiah's prophecy that future generations will be carried into Babylonian captivity. This prediction, fulfilled over a century later, demonstrates the book's prophetic accuracy while transitioning toward themes that dominate the book's second section. The dramatic shift beginning in chapter 40 reflects the changed circumstances of Jewish exile in Babylon. Gone are the warnings of impending judgment, replaced by messages of comfort and restoration. Comfort, comfort my people, says your God. Speak tenderly to Jerusalem, and proclaim to her that her hard service has been completed, that her sin has been paid for, that she has received from the Lord's hand double for all her sins. This section introduces themes that revolutionize understanding of God's character and purposes. The monotheistic declarations reach unprecedented heights. I am the first and I am the last. Apart from me, there is no God. Chapter 44 verse 6 establishes exclusive monotheism that distinguishes biblical faith from all surrounding polytheistic religions. The servant songs scattered throughout chapters 42, 49, 50, and 52-53 present one of the Old Testament's most theologically significant developments. These passages describe a mysterious figure called the servant of the Lord, who will bring justice to the nations and light to the Gentiles. The identity of this servant remains debated. Some interpretations see Israel personified, others identify a specific individual, and Christian tradition understands these as Messianic prophecies fulfilled in Jesus. The fourth servant song in chapter 53 reaches prophetic heights that have influenced theology for millennia. He was despised and rejected by mankind, a man of suffering and familiar with pain. Like one from whom people hide their faces, he was despised, and we held him in low esteem. The passage continues with vivid descriptions of vicarious suffering. But he was pierced for our transgressions. He was crushed for our iniquities. The punishment that brought us peace was on him, and by his wounds we are healed. This remarkable prophecy describes substitutionary atonement with clarity that amazes both Jewish and Christian interpreters. The Ethiopian eunuch in Acts chapter 8 asks Philip the evangelist about this very passage, wondering whether Isaiah speaks of himself or someone else. Philip's response that this refers to Jesus demonstrates early Christian understanding of Isaiah 53 as messianic prophecy. Cyrus the Persian emerges as an unexpected figure in Isaiah's prophecy, explicitly named in chapters 44 and 45 as God's anointed one who will facilitate Jewish return from exile. This is what the Lord says to his anointed, to Cyrus, whose right hand I take hold of to subdue nations before him. The designation of a pagan ruler as God's Messiah demonstrates the universal scope of divine sovereignty. Historical records confirm that Cyrus indeed issued an edict allowing Jewish exiles to return and rebuild Jerusalem's temple, fulfilling Isaiah's detailed predictions. This historical verification strengthens confidence in biblical prophecy while illustrating how God uses even pagan rulers to accomplish divine purposes. The final section of Isaiah, chapters 56 through 66, addresses the challenges facing the returned exilic community. Initial enthusiasm for restoration has given way to disappointment as reality fails to match prophetic expectations. The temple has been rebuilt, but the glory hasn't returned as anticipated. Social problems persist, and foreign domination continues under Persian rule. Chapter 58 addresses religious hypocrisy among the returned community, where fasting and ritual observance mask continued social injustice. Is not this the kind of fasting I have chosen? To loose the chains of injustice and untie the cords of the yoke to set the oppressed free and break every yoke. True religion involves caring for the hungry, clothing the naked, and providing shelter for the homeless. The vision of new heavens and new earth in chapters 65 and 66 provides ultimate hope beyond immediate historical disappointments. See, I will create new heavens and a new earth. The former things will not be remembered, nor will they come to mind. This cosmic renewal theme influences later Jewish apocalyptic literature and Christian eschatology. Throughout Isaiah, the concept of the remnant provides theological balance between judgment and hope. Not all of Israel faces destruction. A faithful remnant will survive divine judgment and participate in future restoration. This doctrine explains how God can judge his people while remaining faithful to covenant promises. Isaiah's influence on the New Testament cannot be overstated. Matthew's Gospel quotes Isaiah more than any other Old Testament book, finding in its prophecies detailed predictions of Jesus' birth, ministry, suffering, and triumph. The Gospel of Luke records Jesus reading from Isaiah 61 in the Nazareth synagogue, declaring these prophecies fulfilled in the listener's hearing. The Apostle Paul extensively uses Isaiah to explain how Gentiles become part of God's people and how Christ's gospel fulfills Old Testament promises. Romans chapters 9 through 11 depend heavily on Isaianic themes to address questions about Jewish rejection of the gospel and ultimate divine purposes for both Jews and Gentiles. Isaiah's literary artistry equals its theological significance. The book employs sophisticated Hebrew poetry, memorable metaphors, and structural patterns that reward careful study. The prophet compares God's people to a vineyard, unfaithful wife, clay in a potter's hands, and sheep gone astray. These images communicate profound theological truths through accessible human experiences. The messianic expectations developed in Isaiah profoundly shaped Jewish hopes for divine intervention and influenced Christian understanding of Jesus' identity and mission. Titles like Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, and Prince of Peace from chapter 9 verse 6 become central to Christian theology and worship. Modern application of Isaiah's message remains remarkably relevant. The prophet's concern for social justice resonates with contemporary movements addressing poverty, oppression, and systemic injustice. His vision of universal peace where nations beat swords into plowshares inspires peace movements worldwide. The book's environmental imagery, describing creation itself participating in redemption, speaks to current ecological concerns. Isaiah envisions renewed creation where the wolf will live with the lamb, the leopard will lie down with the goat, a vision of harmony extending beyond human relationships to encompass all creation. Isaiah's theodicy, explanation of how a good God permits suffering, offers comfort to those experiencing hardship. The suffering servant passages suggest that pain can serve redemptive purposes, while promises of ultimate restoration provide hope beyond present difficulties. The book's international scope, addressing multiple nations and empires, offers perspective on God's sovereignty over world events. In times of political upheaval and international uncertainty, Isaiah's vision of divine control over history provides stabilizing hope. Archaeological discoveries continue validating Isaiah's historical accuracy. The Sennacherib prism corroborates the Assyrian siege of Jerusalem described in chapters 36 to 37. The Cyrus cylinder confirms the Persian king's religious tolerance policy that enabled Jewish return from exile. Dead Sea Scroll discoveries include complete copies of Isaiah dating to the 2nd century BCE, demonstrating remarkable textual preservation across centuries. These manuscripts show minimal variation from later Hebrew texts, supporting confidence in biblical transmission accuracy. The theological development traced through Isaiah, from calls to repentance through promises of restoration to visions of cosmic renewal, provides a framework for understanding divine purposes in history. God's patience with human failure, commitment to justice, and ultimate plan for restoration emerge as central themes. Isaiah's influence extends far beyond religious circles into literature, politics, and social movements. Martin Luther King Jr. drew inspiration from Isaiah's vision of justice rolling down like waters and righteousness like a mighty stream. Political leaders regularly quote Isaiah's promises of peace and justice when articulating national aspirations. The book's combination of immediate historical relevance and transcendent spiritual vision continues attracting readers across cultures and centuries. Its promises speak to universal human longings for peace, justice, restoration, and hope beyond present suffering. As we conclude this comprehensive journey through Isaiah, remember that this ancient text continues speaking to contemporary concerns with surprising relevance. Whether you're facing personal struggles, seeking understanding of world events, or exploring spiritual questions, Isaiah offers profound insights into divine character and purposes. The next time you hear about international conflicts, remember Isaiah's vision of universal peace. When confronting injustice, recall the prophet's passionate calls for righteousness. In moments of despair, find hope in promises of restoration and renewal that echo throughout these 66 chapters. Make sure to subscribe for more deep dives into biblical literature that continues shaping our world today. In the comments below, share which Isaiah passage resonates most with your current circumstances. And don't forget to check out our playlist on Old Testament prophecy for more fascinating insights into ancient texts with modern relevance. Until next time, keep exploring the wisdom that has guided humanity for thousands of years and continues offering hope and direction for our complex modern world.